And now, today's guest speaker. Today's guest speaker is our state's chief legal officer. He directs 500 attorneys and nearly 700 professional staff providing legal services to state agencies, boards, and commissions. He earned undergraduate degrees in both economics and international studies. Bless you, sir. Yeah, those are my fields, as you probably know. Both with honors, not me, him, from the University of Washington, where he was student body president and Phi Beta Kappa. He received his JD from the University of Chicago Law School in 1988 and began his law career at the Bellevue office of Perkins Coie. In 1995, Rob was elected to the King County Council, where he was reelected twice without opposition and rated outstanding by the Municipal League. Now, word has it that he also does a first-rate impression of Donald Trump. And I'm sure that "you're fired" line really keeps your staff on their toes. Fellow Rotarians, please welcome the 17th Attorney General of the State of Washington, Rob McKenna.
I have to tell you, Bill, that when Connor saw you up here with your red sweater and your gray slacks, he leaned over to me and said, "Is he a cougar?" Thanks for straightening that out. And I want to tell you, I did not brainwash this young man. He's figured it out on his own. He's born to be a husky. So good job, Con. Listen, we have some folks here today who I'd like to call special attention to because they're two of the reasons I'm so proud to lead what I believe is the finest Attorney General's office in the United States today. I have two of our bright young talents here sitting at the front table, and I'd like them both to stand and please help me acknowledge their public service. James Booter from our Tacoma office and Matthew Tillman Havens from our Seattle office. Gentlemen. As all of you know who manage people, one of the great joys of having that opportunity is to hire and help develop young talent. And our office is very, very fortunate to be able to do that. We hired 50 new attorneys this year. We're over 500 attorneys at this point, and we're very fortunate that public-minded young men and women like these two have decided to join our office. I can't help but comment that with Carl Egge here, that when I walked into our office in downtown Seattle in November of 2004, shortly after the election for the first transition meeting, I stood there on the 20th floor of the Union Bank of California building in the lobby, and I looked around, and I thought, this place looks really familiar. And it dawned on me that I had been a summer associate at Bogle and Gates that summer of 1986, 20 years before, with Mr. Spader over here, who was over in the Bellevue office. And it's great to see Carl here. It brings back a lot of good memories of a great summer and a good start to my legal career as your summer associate. So, Carl, thank you very much. Appreciate it. He probably would have done without my mentioning that it was 20 years ago, but anyway. I want to talk to you today about a topic which is much on our minds at the Attorney General's office, and that's the issue of identity theft. Identity theft is the #1 consumer protection priority of our office, and indeed of many offices around the country, many other Attorneys General offices. Why is that? Well, let me tell you the story about a young woman who serves in my identity theft task force named Jenny. About 6 years ago, Jenny was a community college student. She was had gone back to school, she was retraining, and things were going pretty well for her. And then one day she received a phone call from a local auto dealer. And he wanted to know why she hadn't been making payments on her new car. You know, the white one? That was when she realized that her identity had been stolen. As she researched it, she discovered that the identity thieves involved, including the individual who had stolen her information out of her community college records, had opened about 35 credit cards in her name around the country. It has taken her years and many thousands of dollars to clear up her credit history and to deal with the psychological trauma. Because having your identity stolen is not quite the same as having your car broken into or even your home. It's the knowledge that someone is out there posing as you, showing up with your Social Security number, perhaps your address, your bank account number. And the name of the game for identity thieves today is not merely to try to use your credit card or your debit card, which they can try, but of course you're going to cancel those very rapidly if you know it's been stolen, right? The name of the game for them now is to try to use your personal information to open new lines of credit in your name. That's where the real money is. Now, Jenny's case happened several years ago. She still has to battle continuing problems with her credit history. But let me tell you a very recent story from Yakima County. The police chief of Teton, anyone been there? Anyone heard of it? There we go. All right. All right, small town in Yakima County, recently had to notify more than 150 residents in this small rural community that they were victims of identity theft. He believed that most of them had no idea that they had been victimized. During his investigation, Chief Domish's department recovered a backpack containing hundreds of pieces of identity information, including driver's licenses, Social Security cards, checkbooks, bank statements with canceled checks, credit card applications. Anyone ever get those? They're offering you the free credit, the credit card application, you're pre-approved. There might even be that handy check enclosed. I love that. It's called a convenience check. Whose convenience is it anyway? Birth certificates, automobile registrations. He believed that some of the documents had been stolen up to a year prior to the discovery. And it appeared that some of the documents had been taken during car prowls, others had been taken from mailboxes that had been pried open. Incidents like this in the big cities and small towns of our state are becoming more and more common. Let me tell you another story about a business that had its identity stolen, owned by a good friend of mine, very successful business here in Seattle. He emailed me one day as I was walking back from a lunch appointment, and he said in his email that someone had been running around to retailers opening lines of credit in his company's name. And he contacted the Seattle police. They had about 2 fraud detectives total. They didn't have the resources. They couldn't help him. So I put him in touch with the State Patrol, and we got in touch with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we started investigating. And what did we find that connected his case and the Yakima case and Jenny's case? What we found is the explanation for the reason that, the explanation of the fact that we are number 7 in the country in identity theft here in Washington State per capita, number 7. We were number 8 a couple years ago. We've been moving in the wrong direction. The common factor we found in all these cases is drug use. I believe that one of the key reasons that we're number 7 in the nation for identity theft per capita is that we are number 8 in the nation for methamphetamine use per capita. There is a close connection. You will rarely find a meth addict in this state or elsewhere in the country who is not involved in identity theft today. The two go hand in hand. There have been stories making this connection in the New York Times and in the USA Today and in the Phoenix newspaper and here in the Oregonian and in our local newspapers. The connection between identity theft and meth use is very, very close. Well, when we had the State Patrol look at my friend's business identity theft case, we discovered the prime suspect lived in Snohomish County. And when State Patrol raided his home, they found dozens of pieces of office equipment that he had purchased. They found other equipment that he had purchased from Office Depot. They found several of those really nice stainless steel barbecues from one of the big box hardware stores. And he was in the process of selling this equipment to support his meth habit. Now, what makes this story unusual in part is that we had the resources available to go after this case. The second most important reason that we're number 7 in the country for identity theft per capita and that we are number 1 in the country for property crime overall is, in my view, that we rank near the bottom in our nation for per capita law enforcement officers. We're somewhere between 47th and 50th in the number of officers we have per capita in this state, according to federal data. And when property is stolen or an identity is stolen, the police have to prioritize. And the violent crime will always be prioritized more highly, as it should be, than the property crime. And therefore, I think this is a key reason that we continue to be victimized at a higher rate for property crime and identity theft than just about anywhere else in the country. I mentioned to you that in Yakima they believe the data was taken, the information was taken out of mailboxes and out of people's cars. People also report having their identity stolen out of the recycling bins. Let me ask you, how many of you have a shredder in your home now? Just about all of you. I'll bet that a lot of you didn't have one 3 to 5 years ago. The fact that you do shows that we are making progress in educating the public about how to protect themselves. And indeed, consumer education is a key part of our strategy. But there are other ways that identities are being stolen today as well. For example, security breaches. The word or the company name ChoicePoint has become, in many people's minds, synonymous with data breach. That's kind of unfortunate for ChoicePoint. You never want to be the company that becomes the poster child for something bad. And ChoicePoint, in fact, is recovering and is actually a model in many ways now for protecting data. But ChoicePoint became the first notorious case of a database being compromised, allowing identity thieves to use data about consumers to forge their identities. At one point, there were an estimated 750 cases of identity theft linked to the ChoicePoint breaches. So security breaches are a big problem. And then, of course, there's the internet-based fraud that we call spyware and phishing emails that have become so commonplace today. Emails sent out by the tens of millions to consumers with the knowledge that these individuals may just, in fact, be a customer of that bank or that stock brokerage, or they may use eBay, or they may use PayPal. And these have become common means of attempting to obtain people's identity information as well. So what are we doing about all of this in our state and nationally? First of all, I realized when I came into my office that I had one of the finest consumer protection divisions in the country today. However, it was exactly the same size in January of 2005 as it was in 1983, which was the last time additional personnel had been funded and added to the office. So I went to the state legislature. I pointed out that we've been able to find over $3 million a biennium in administrative savings and costs, and I asked them to reprogram some of those savings into our Consumer Protection Division. And they did so. And with that money, we have expanded our high-tech unit. We've hired 2 more attorneys to go after high-tech fraud. We hired a computer forensics expert to give us the technological capacity to pursue these cases. If you show up on the doorstep of your local sheriff with a good old-fashioned homicide or theft or arson, they know what to do. But try showing up on his doorstep with 10 boxes of computer source code or internet records or other high-tech data, or simply ask him to try to trace a crime back over the internet. It's very, very difficult. And so a key move was to hire this computer forensics expert who built a lab in our office, a computer lab. And these computer labs are called honeypots. And we call them honeypots because they're designed to go out on the internet on an automated basis to attract attention to those particular computers. And they run applications called honey monkeys. A honey monkey is an application that is best explained by reminding you of the old story about the old idea that if you put enough monkeys on enough typewriters in a room for long enough, they'll eventually come up with the complete works of Shakespeare. Connor liked that one. Thanks, Con. Honey monkey applications allowed us to go out on the internet and troll for phishing sites, to troll for spyware sites. We have been very successful. Not only have we brought more spyware cases, I believe, than any other state in the country now in just about a year and a half, but we also now are teaching other attorneys general offices how to do the same thing. I led a Tech 101 seminar in 2005 for my fellow AGs, and this year we led a seminar I put together on spyware, because until we have enough AG offices and, of course, the Federal Trade Commission going out and pursuing spyware cases, we will not tame the Wild West frontier that we call the Internet. So we're doing that. We're also collaborating on education efforts. This is really key. The other thing I realized when I came into office is that not only did we not have enough resources initially, but there wasn't very much collaboration or coordination occurring. So in November of 2005, we held an Identity Theft Summit, the first of its kind in our state, one of the first in the country, down at SeaTac. We brought together 300 leaders from law enforcement, from the business community, consumer advocacy groups, and the like. Connor, you really got to stop doing that with your spoon, man. It's driving me crazy. There we go. Thanks. It's just, thank you. Hey, he's my son. If I can't, you know. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. So we brought all these people together, these experts, and we said, what can we do to reduce identity theft in our state? They came up with over 100 ideas. And out of those ideas, we formed 2 task forces. One of them that we formed with prosecuting attorney Norm Mailing and with the director of licensing for the state, Liz Luce, is called the Legit Task Force, Washington's law enforcement group against identity theft. Legit has been communicating with government agencies, advising them on how to reduce the odds that the information they possess will fall into the hands of identity theft. For example, we're urging them to re-examine their data protection protocols on their computers. We're asking them to rethink where they keep hard copies of data and to find ways to protect it by locking it up, to run background checks on employees who have access to that information, because so many cases of identity theft today arise from an employee or a friend of an employee getting access to hard copies of information in offices. We're going to be sending similar letters to business associations around the state, asking them to help their members tighten up processes and procedures as well. We've also been partnering with businesses to identify and develop a number of identity theft initiatives, and we're counting on help from them and from other government agencies and from law enforcement to develop several programs in terms of better law enforcement coordination and in terms of consumer education and outreach. We need better law enforcement coordination because, unlike narcotics or homicides, where we've become very good at collaborating and sharing information across jurisdictional boundaries, we're really not doing that very well in cases of identity theft, even though identity theft is frequently highly organized and operates across multiple jurisdictional lines. We also are doing quite a bit on consumer education and outreach. This is critical because we will never have enough law enforcement resources to go after every case of identity theft and related crime. People need to learn how to protect themselves. You know, if you think about it, until the postal system was invented a couple hundred years ago, we had no problem with mail fraud. And until the telegraph was invented, there was no such thing as wire fraud. And of course, until the internet became so dominant in our economy and culture, we had no internet fraud. Each time one of these new technologies has developed, we've had to learn how to protect ourselves. And we have had to relearn those same lessons. We still see the mail fraud. You know, the notification, you've won the New Zealand lottery, congratulations. You know, just deposit that check that they enclosed with your winning notice. And by the way, we need you to wire $4,000 of that money to us in New Zealand or Canada or somewhere. Number 2, we still see wire fraud. We recently settled with Western Union, First Data Corp, because we needed them to tighten up on the use of their services to commit fraud. And third, we're going after internet fraud in large part through education, by teaching people how to protect themselves. We had a series of high-tech cyber seminars around the state that we organized with Microsoft, with the FTC, and with AARP. They were all sold out. We had to add second seminars in Spokane and elsewhere to accommodate the overflow crowds. People want to know how to protect themselves, and they're learning how to protect themselves. And finally, we're working with AARP to train seniors and others on how to train others. We're training the trainers on how to prevent fraud, how to detect fraud, and how to avoid identity theft in particular. These efforts will continue to be critically important because, as I said, even if we can finally get ourselves out of the bottom 20th, bottom 10th of states for law enforcement officers per capita, we're still going to need people to learn how to protect themselves. So we're going to continue to work on consumer education and outreach. We're going to work on law enforcement coordination. We're going to continue to set the standard nationally in going after high-tech fraud. And together, I look forward to coming, together we're going to make progress, and I look forward to coming back to report to you someday that we're no longer number 7 in identity theft, that we're no longer number 8th in methamphetamine use, and that we are comfortably at the bottom of those lists in our country. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
We have time for some Q&A. We've got Mark and Nancy with the microphones. Well, let me ask the first question while they're going around. One of my favorite questions in this area is, why is it when some commercial enterprise gives credit to someone on the flimsiest of identification that it's my problem and not their problem? I had my identity stolen when the Congress of the United States published my Social Security number in the Congressional Record. when I was promoted to admiral, and someone took advantage of that. So why was that my problem and not somebody else's problem?
Well, I think the answer to that is that we've all become addicted, if you will, in our economy as a country, to easy credit. We are all very impatient. When you go up and you apply for an auto loan or a mortgage refinance or maybe a credit card at a retailer, you now have the expectation that it's going to happen very, very quickly. That's a great convenience to all of us, and it's a great advantage to businesses who love nothing more than when the customer opens up that credit card and immediately maxes out the credit line by walking out the door with a flat screen television or some other product. The problem is that the ease of credit has also made it a lot easier for credit thieves. So we're all going to have to take responsibility. We're going to have to accept greater inconvenience potentially. And one thing that we can do that would help in that regard, Bill, would be to amend our state law on credit freezes. This is the law that currently exists that allows you to freeze access to your credit history, so that if someone shows up and tries to open up a credit line using your Social Security number, they would be denied access. The clerk would be denied access to your credit history when they contact the Credit Rating Bureau until you decide to lift the freeze. But under current Washington state law, you have to already be a victim of identity theft to freeze your credit. We think the law ought to be changed to match that of the vast majority of states, where you can freeze your credit when you think you need to, not have to wait until after your identity has actually been stolen.
Oh, okay. First, I'd like to commend you, Rob, on the education part and working with AARP and the different programs that you're doing. My question is, when and how will businesses ever be held responsible for the materials that they're putting into the recycle, the hard drives that they're donating? Because confidential information is getting out because of businesses' lack of taking care of it.
There is already a law in Washington state that holds the owner of data liable, responsible, if they're negligent with that data, with personal information. Not just businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, all can be potentially liable under this law, which sets a higher standard for the owners or possessors of that data. So that liability is already there as a matter of state statute. There's also the potential tort liability for the owner of data. Just ask the executives at Choice Point about class action lawsuits. So there's a good deal of exposure out there, and I think most organizations have become aware of that potential exposure, and most organizations and their CIOs and other, or CISOs, if they have an information security officer, have been taking steps. But we have a long way to go. I would point out that although theft of information from businesses or lost information is a rising problem as a cause of identity theft, the number one source of identity theft continues to be individuals losing their own information by leaving a purse locked up in a car or a wallet, or not having a locking mailbox. If you don't have a locking mailbox, please get one, because mail theft is such a big problem.
Rob, my question is regarding telecom. My software company is recently, since what I've learned, is the victim of commission fraud, and where, in T-Mobile's case, their resellers are adding unauthorized services and lines to business accounts. And I'm just curious what your organization is, if they're addressing the egregious conduct of the telecom industry. We had a similar experience with Sprint.
Yes, absolutely. If you have information about being slammed, as that's called, as unauthorized lines, please contact my office. We're very interested in those cases. We will go after resellers who are breaking the law by switching people without their permission or knowledge. So contact us. We do routinely investigate those kinds of claims. By the way, I must say you have a very handsome and high-paid microphone holder over here. Where'd Mr. Wright go?
Thanks, Rob.
He's almost as good looking as my former chief deputy, his brother, Craig Wright, another member of this club.
About a year ago, I received a letter from my insurance company saying, congratulations, you are now covered for identity theft, and there's no additional charge on your policy. There was no, being an insurance company, they were careful not to say what covered meant. But my question is, do you know what they mean by that, and is this a common practice now among insurance companies?
I don't know what that company means because the details would depend on the company's coverage and on the details of the policy, any addendum to that policy, and any exclusions. It is true that many insurers have become aware of the opportunity to serve their customers with coverage, and it is true that there are other companies that are out there that are marketing different tools to help people who might become or have become victims of identity theft. As always, in such things, in such cases, the key is to read the details carefully, read the language carefully. But it is a growing area, and as in any kind of risk, people will look for a way to sell insurance against that risk. I think it's just fine if they do so, but caveat emptor, as always.
If identity theft is an effect and methadone usage is a cause, what is the hope in the latter area?
Right.
We seem to be a national center.
Yes.
Pierce County and King County and parts of Oregon.
I'd love to come back someday and give you my methamphetamine speech because it's a separate speech, but I'll give you the thumbnail sketch. We are working very hard on meth. Just as identity theft is my #1 consumer protection priority, methamphetamine is our #1 public safety priority, and we've been doing quite a lot. We wrote an omnibus meth bill to increase funding for law enforcement, to increase support for multi-jurisdictional narcotics task forces. We also increased support for drug treatment, which is absolutely critical, and for environmental cleanup. That bill, which had a pretty significant price tag on it, passed unanimously in the Washington State House and Senate this year in 2006, was signed into law by the governor. The number of meth labs is down in our state dramatically by about 75% in the last 5 years, which is good news. The bad news is that the international narcotics organizations have stepped right in and now supply about 80% of the meth that's consumed in the state, much of it being manufactured in Mexico. So we have a lot of work to do there, and we are working hard. The thing is that getting rid of meth labs is a good thing in and of itself because it's so dangerous. They are so dangerous. And it's also easier to go after narcotics traffickers than to go after 2,000 meth labs a year. It just doesn't disperse our resources as much. So I'm confident that given enough time, we're going to knock that problem down to lower levels than they are today. Thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was terrific. And thank you for your service and for your leadership and service to the people of our state. We're really grateful. Thank you. As a grandparent, Rob, I'm now empowered to impart this piece of wisdom, which is your own children always bug you a lot more than they bug anyone else. When they're bugging you, everyone else just thinks it's cute. Nice job, Connor. Next week, November 13th, we'll be back in the 3rd floor Metropolitan Ballroom at the Sheraton, where our speaker will be Craig Floyd, Chairman and CEO of the National Law Enforcement Officers Fund, which brings us to this week's pretty good rule. Take responsibility for your own life. Never blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck. Life is not fair. Don't whine, ever. See you next week.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from Enterprise Seattle. For over 35 years, Enterprise Seattle has provided client-based economic development services to businesses throughout King County and its 39 cities. More information on Enterprise Seattle and how they help businesses grow and prosper can be found at www.enterpriseseattle.org. And by First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.